Hey everybody, welcome to Bible Class with Mr. Dustin. I'm very glad that you're here today. Now, today, we're going to be talking about our memory verses that we've been working on, and we're going to do a little bit of application. What do they mean for us? How do we deal with them? So let's get to it. So our first memory verse is Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1. And I'm going to read this from the NIV. Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. We're going to go over to the kitchen table. I've got a little bit of a demonstration for you that I think will help us understand this memory verse. Confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. So I have some things here to talk about this, because I wanted to talk about something that you can't see, but that we know to be real. So I've got some very small magnets. So I'm going to zoom in and show you some of these things in a minute. But you've probably played with magnets before, and you know that they will stick together. These are actually what are called neodymium or neodymium magnets, and they're very strong. And I want to just show you a few things that you can do with them. But I've got a piece of metal. This is just a square metal stock, and it sticks to the magnets. Anything that is magnetic, these will stick to. So I want to zoom in and show you so you can see a little bit better what's going on. But then we're going to talk about what does that have to do with what we're talking about today. These magnets have two sides to them. They have a flat side and a curved side. Generally, we call them poles of a magnet. And if you put the opposite poles together, they don't like each other. So if I take these backwards and try to push them together, I can't, because they're pushing each other apart. But if I turn them around, see if you can even see, and I try to just hold them close, they just stick together. The same, they're strong magnets. If I take my piece of metal and I just hold it close, the magnet sticks. And look at the other one. Just me bringing it close makes it move, right? So I think it's interesting to consider the way these magnets work. If I have my big piece of metal, so they stick, right? But what does it have to do with what we're talking about? I can't see the force of magnets. I look at it and it just looks like a little piece of metal to me. Just by holding it, I can't tell anything different about any of these. I can't feel it. It just looks like metal. But there's a force that's surrounding this that I can experience, and I can experiment with, right? I can hold it close and it draws the other magnet, or I can hold them backwards from each other and it moves the magnet. It doesn't like it. It pushes them away. And I think that that's interesting that they rearrange and snap together. But it's an invisible force. It's something that I am confident in even though I can't see it. Whenever you think about Abram, he had experienced God, I think, much like we experience the magnetic force of magnets. I can't see it. But whenever I try to hold these together in the opposites, they won't go together. I can't push them together. It's surprisingly strong. And then whenever I hold them where they will go together, they snap together easily. And it's just fascinating to consider the invisible power of magnets. I think God is very much like this, the invisible power of God. Abraham had experienced God. Even though you can't see him, he experienced him in a very real way. And I think that's interesting to consider, especially whenever we get to our next memory verse. So the next memory verse that we have is Hebrews 11, verse 8. That one. By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. So what do we do with that? Well, whenever I think about it, Abraham had experienced God, just like we talked about with the magnets. He knew that God was real. He knew that God was calling him and that he had a place for him to go, even though he didn't know where it was. And Abraham obeyed and went. I feel like that takes guts. Maybe faith is guts, I don't know. But whenever I think about that, I have faith that God exists. But sometimes I'm still afraid to do what he calls me to do. I may be afraid to follow him fully. But Abraham, he followed God wholeheartedly, even into a place of unknown. He didn't know where he was going, but he went. I think that takes guts. It takes courage. So today, God calls us to follow him, to obey him, even if we don't know where we are going, because God is leading us all the way. And he wants us to be strong and courageous enough to follow him where he calls us, even when we don't know where we're going. That takes faith, that we would be like Abraham to follow him. So I would encourage you, try to read God's word. Try to find out where is he calling you to go and follow him. It takes guts. It takes courage. It takes faith. Then our last memory verse that I want to talk about is John 1:1-3. This is one that we can sing together. But in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. Let's sing that. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. So there's one more verse that we'll learn to that song, but that's how that one goes. But I want to talk about what do we do with that? John 1, in the beginning was the Word. Sounds like Genesis 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. John 1:14 will say that the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Specifically, that's talking about Jesus. And if the Word was in the beginning and with God and is God, through him all things were made, Jesus was there. He was part of God's self. He was part of God's plan. He was not an afterthought. He's been there from the beginning. And that's an important thing for us to remember. When you look at Genesis chapter 12, there's a promise that is made to Abraham. It says that in him all nations of the earth would be blessed. Knowing that Jesus was a part of the plan of God from the very beginning helps me to realize that in that promise, Genesis 12 verse 3, Jesus was the fulfillment, the Son of God. He was there from the beginning. He was planned from the beginning. And I think that's important for us to remember because it helps me with my faith to follow God, that he is not arbitrary. He is not making it up as he goes. He has had a plan from the beginning, and he has a plan for me and for you and how we can be saved. And it's through his Son that was with God in the beginning. And I'm glad that I can have confidence in the things that I do not see, just like with the magnets, because God is present. He is something that I can feel and experience, even though I can't see him. Now on Wednesday, we're going to talk about El Roi. And you'll have to come back to hear what is El Roi. Hope to see you then, and I hope you have a good week.